You're listening to the Sass Says podcast. I'm your host, Christy Rocha, also known as Sass. I identify as a woman, a wife, and a mother. That should tell you a lot already. And over the last few years, I've learned the value of talk therapy. I have seen how my inner work not only enhances my own well-being, but also my marriage, my parenting, my relationships. And in fact, you wouldn't be hearing this right now if it weren't for the work I've done. My mission is to debunk the misconceptions and stigmas around what therapy is and who it's for. Let's normalize working on our mental health and seeking help when needed. We've all heard of self-care, self-help, and self-love, but do you often wonder how to actually make it all happen? I do. You'll hear strategy-based conversations with professionals, as well as inspiring and validating stories from women who are just like you and me. Think of this podcast as the weekly therapy sessions you didn't know you needed, with a dash of sass, a lot of vulnerability, and me, relentlessly asking, but how? Hello. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited. I have Abbey Williams on the show today. I've followed Abbey for the longest time. You probably remember her as Mimosas with Moms. She is now rebranded to You, the Mother. She is also a behavioral health therapist, coach, and mom of 4. For 10 years, Abbey has provided direct clinical service to families as well as write and speak about various parenting and mental health topics. Abbey focuses on helping moms heal from motherhood identity issues, burnout, estrangement, and breaking generational trauma. She is committed to supporting, empowering, and connecting with all parents in all seasons of parenthood by providing accessible information on her podcast called You, the Mother Podcast. Her social media platforms, coaching, support groups, and webinars for people all over the world. She has been featured by PopSugar, Parents, SheKnows, and Romper, and was named a top 50 parenting podcast by Podcast Magazine in 2022. Abbey navigates her blended family and co-parenting life in Cincinnati, Ohio with her husband, 4 kids, and 2 sister labs. So, I share this on the show, and I just have to say it here again. Abbey, to me, is goals. I just love that she is just such an amazing blend of professional and personal content, her work. We'll learn more about her personal story. It's truly incredible. She's a remarkable woman, mom, and human being. And professionally, she's showing up and supporting women and moms in ways that many out there have yet to do. So, you know me at all in real life or just from this show, you know that I'm not a therapist, but I love therapists, and I also love people who are super vulnerable and transparent with what's going on in their life, and Abbey is all of those things. So, goals. All right, let me stop gabbing. Here's Abbey. Hey, Abbey, so nice to meet you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Christy.
Okay, this is embarrassing, but you are like goals for me.
Thank you.
The combination of your professional background, everything you do for women and moms, and just your willingness to share so much of your story is like, oh, thank God there are people out there doing this because we need it. So thank you.
Yeah, I think I definitely kind of like dabble in these 2 different like spaces of the internet, right? Where there's like therapists that show up and they're just very like clinical and they give you all the resources and information. And I love that they're there. And then there's like more influencery, like story, here's my life.
Yeah.
And I don't really feel like I fit into either one of these boxes, but I am like both.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think to me, that's what I like most, honestly, because
Yeah.
going to your page, going to your podcast, going to your resources, it's like we want
Yeah.
both, you know? We
Yeah.
want to learn, but we
Yeah.
also want to know that there's a human being that's actually putting it into play in real life, because that's the hard part.
It is the hard part.
Yeah. So do you currently
I
practice?
do.
You
Yeah.
do? Oh,
Mhm.
wow. Okay. So, whoa. All right. So you have a private practice,
Mm.
coaching, podcast, mom of 4, content creator, author. Like, what do you eat for breakfast?
I'm just really tired. I'm just really tired, and it's really loud at my house, and I have a very supportive partner.
Okay. Yeah.
I could not do it without my partner. We don't really have a lot of external support. His parents live 4 hours away. I'm estranged from my mother. Um, I have a relationship with my dad, but it's my dad.
Yeah. Totally. Yes.
So it's like, so our support system is kind of minimal. We have like 2 sitters that we really lean into, and then it's really just me and my husband. And we have a lot of trial and error over the years, but I think now we have just such a rock solid like system and routine that we do that really allows us both to be doing lots of different
Yeah.
things, but it's hard and it's a lot.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
The trial and error, you know, looking back,
Mhm.
anything that you're like, "Gosh, I really wish we did this sooner," or just skipped
Yeah.
over entirely, like, give us the wisdom.
Yeah, right. So what we do now is we do a weekly check-in. I've been like talking about it a lot over on my social media, like the past month maybe. I created a free template that's on my website also. Um, but previously, so I was a single mother for 6 years and I got all of my education then. That was
It was
crazy.
wild.
But then when Marcus came into the picture and we had our first daughter, and maybe I was like pregnant with our third child, or maybe she was like a baby. Probably she was a baby. I took a extended maternity leave after my third. The girls are 2 under 2, or they were 2 under 2. They're 15 months apart. So it's like, I cannot go back to work like this.
Yeah.
This is crazy. So I quit my job that I was previously at. And I took 9 months off. And like during that time, it was like I was just drowning with little people at home. And my husband would walk in at the end of the day and it's like, what's for dinner? And I'm like, what do you mean, what's for dinner? Like, I haven't even eaten all day,
Right.
right? So I'm like this hangry monster. He's like walking in, there's no plan. So now like we have a weekly check-in every Saturday usually. We sit down and it's like so routine now that it takes us like 10, 15 minutes. It's not like this whole ordeal anymore. But we meal plan for the week. We look at the calendar. It's like, oh, we've got volleyball on this day, dance on this day, who's running what kid. So we kind of like game plan, meal plan around what makes sense on each day. We pick our weekly goal, what needs done around the house, who's doing those things around the house. It's not all falling on mom, who's scheduling the appointments, and it's just like a whole conversation. I just think that, like, we kind of go into motherhood and it's very easy for women, especially, to fall into this role of the default parent and being the one that's doing everything. Um, and maybe with your first, you're like really excited and you're like, oh, I can do all of the things. And then maybe baby number two comes, or maybe, your season of life changes. You're like, I'm drowning. I can't do all of these things by myself. And we really have to, I think, have these conversations with our partner and teach them what needs done. And that feels like a whole nother job and it's unfair. And I get it. I'm right there with you.
Mhm.
But they don't know.
Yeah.
And like things that we kind of naturally fall into. And like when you talk about the mental load of motherhood, it's like they don't know that you're like, okay, I also need to sign up for the summer camp. And oh my gosh, do they need new water bottles for that summer camp? What kind of clothes do they need to bring? You know what I mean?
Oh,
And
yeah.
like that whole checklist that just automatically goes off in your head,
Mhm.
their head does not work like that. And so I think like now having these weekly check ins with my partner, his brain does know, like, what the list is, right?
Yeah.
He can sign the kids up for soccer and then immediately know they don't have cleats that fit because they never
Right.
do. You know
Right.
what I mean? And, like, so I need to be on the lookout for that coupon that
Right.
comes for the day that we go and buy cleats, and so now, like, we kinda have those things. I shared a couple weeks ago that I was traveling over the weekend, a couple weekends ago, and my husband was texting me while I was traveling, like, "Hey, I'm going to be traveling at the beginning of the week. So do these meals work for you? Like I'm doing the meal planning and the grocery shopping right now. Like, hey, do these meals work for these days? And I'm like, well, let's change this and this. But, so like we were doing this check-in
Amazing.
via
Yeah.
text. And so, I'm like, don't compare that, like, this is
Yeah.
years to get here, right?
Yeah.
But, um, but that is like something that has just completely changed our life is just getting on the same page,
Yeah.
checking in about what's going well, what's not going
Right.
well.
Sounds pretty simple, but it's not. We know
It's a
that. Yeah.
lot. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot. But I think that like once you make it kind of a routine and a habit, it gets
Yeah.
easier. It's like going to the gym. It sucks at the beginning, but then like maybe you start looking forward to it. I don't know. I'm not a gym person, but gym people probably they start getting used to it and they like
Yeah.
it, right? Or other things that we're doing that are good for us,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Just at some point as you're talking, all I could think about was what 21, 22-year-old Abby, like, would think of
Yeah.
everything you're saying now, just trying to, like, survive school and a
I
newborn,
was
and
very, very in survival mode.
here you
Yeah.
are, like, with your
Yeah.
husband texting you about
Yeah. Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
quite an arc.
I don't think that that girl back then, I wish I could like go back and give her a
Yeah.
hug because just like so much insecurity and self-doubt and there was so much judgment in my family of origin, from society, from friends, you know what I mean, of having an unplanned pregnancy at 20 years old. I had him when I was 21. And halfway through my bachelor's degree, I think a lot of people were like, if you're going to have this baby, you're never going to do anything with your
Yeah.
life. And I was just very determined to prove it to myself, prove everybody else
Mhm.
wrong, make something of my life and for this child. Um, but so much unknown, right?
Yeah.
Is anybody ever going to love me? Am I ever going to end up with a partner? What is this going to look like? Um, am I going to make it through all my schooling? I have a beautiful co-parenting relationship with his dad. And, that has been amazing,
Yeah.
but that could have gone lots of different ways, especially both of us being so young. I think, I've just always operated from a place of putting my children first.
Mhm.
And that has been, like, so evident in, like, everything that I do, right? Where I have this great co-parenting relationship because we put him
Mhm.
first. I, was able to do all these things because that was what was gonna get me and my son to a place of stability, financially more stable. And like our weekly check-ins, I was just talking about, like, with my partner currently, I think that creates for more time to spend with them instead of bickering with each other about what the heck's for
Yeah.
dinner.
Yeah.
And now like we're able to connect with our kids at the end of the day because we know what's for dinner. We easily slide into that dinner time thing. And then we go into reading with our kids or checking in about what's going on at school. How can I help you with this project? Let's study together.
Mhm.
And just having some of those moments, checking in about what's going well with each kid. And hey, the way that we're talking to this kid isn't great. We need to do better here,
Yeah.
and like both being on that page. So I just think like being so child focused is really important.
So the determination and the drive to sort of prove everyone wrong and say, "No,
Mhm.
not me." What do
Yeah.
you attribute that to? Where did that come from?
So I think I just have a really complicated relationship with my mother. We have been estranged now for 3.5 years. Um, But I really kind of grew up in the role in my family of being hyper vigilant to other people's
Mm.
emotions, feeling responsible for making my mother happy. And that kind of manifested into some people pleasing, some overproductivity. Maybe if I just do this, she'll love me. Maybe if I get this degree, she'll love me. Maybe she'll be proud of me if I do this. And at some point, I just realized nothing I do is going to fix this. This isn't me that's the problem.
Right.
And so I'm glad that I think, when we talk about like being on healing journeys and some like trauma responses or some things that maybe you pick up to survive in some dysfunctional family systems, it's really hard because you're like, but some of these things served
Yeah.
me, right? And like, so being this like overproductive person and overachieving and like, I've got to prove something, it did serve
Yeah.
me, right? And so, I think that something that does not get talked about enough of we hear so much about like healing journeys on social media right now. It's
Mhm.
like such a buzzword and I love that. But it can also come with like this identity crisis because it's like when so much of yourself is attached to
Mhm.
some of the trauma responses that you've adapted
Mhm.
or adopted, now it's like, now who am I? If I'm not going to tie my worth to being my achievements, my successes, here's like my resume, if that's not my worth, what
Yeah.
is? And that gets very like an identity crisis. It's kind of you're like you have to come back home to yourself and figure out who you are now. And that is a whole journey. But yeah, you know, I think a lot of that. I also just think that having a baby as a young mom, we live in a society where it's very interesting. I don't know like how many of your listeners are here in the States, but I feel like the States especially kind of glorifies premarital sex,
Yeah.
sexy stuff, you
Yes.
know what I mean?
Totally.
Like,
Yes. Right.
like wear things
Mhm.
that look great, I think that we that's
Mm.
just the norm, and I don't think that that's wrong. But then we also shame the consequences of having sex,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Like, it's kinda like speeding, like, everybody probably has sped before, but not everybody gets a speeding
Right.
ticket, And so I think that a lot of young adults, teenagers, young adults are having sex. Not all of them are getting pregnant,
Right.
and that doesn't mean that they weren't being careful. I was taking my birth control at the same time every day, wasn't on
Wow.
antibiotics,
Yeah.
and, like, there just is that point, oh, 1% or whatever it is,
Wow. Yeah.
And so I think also, like, kinda that just societal pressure of feeling like I'm being judged, I'm being looked at, um and I just, like, have to make it. I have to prove, like, "See, just because I had a baby at 21 years old doesn't mean my life ended.
Yeah.
It means my life was enriched. I had this beautiful child that was able to love longer.
Mhm.
And, and we have a really unique relationship where I feel like we really grew up together.
Mhm.
I think our relationship is going to be different than my other three that came in a more stable time of my life.
Mhm.
Um, and it's beautiful, and I wish I would have been more stable, but, it worked out, and I did have that determination and drive to get us to where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you I don't know, is this if this is, like, totally, like, you know, you're
No, you're
awful,
fine.
like, you can just let me know, but was there a time where you considered not going through with the pregnancy, and how did you
Yeah,
make that choice?
yeah, yeah, I definitely did. I went to all the clinics. I went to a, like, Christian there's, like, I don't know if you wanna say, like, pro-life, but, like, a Christian family-based, pregnancy center down by my college
Mhm.
that I went to. I went there and got all their pamphlets and their whole spiel. I went to Planned Parenthood and, looked into the abortion route,
Mhm.
and I'm very pro-choice, which was weird because I was raised in a religious background,
Mm.
and a lot of the things that were said to me by family was that you should not go through with this pregnancy, and I'm like, "Wait,
That's
we
contradictory.
literally preach this."
Yeah. Wow.
But I'm very pro-choice. I went and collected all of my information and I just kind of figured, or I just kind of sat with myself and knew that this was the right decision for me personally.
Mhm.
I didn't really look into adoption so much. I knew that that was an option also. I guess maybe if I was, I don't know, leaning some kind of way, but knew I couldn't
Mhm.
make it, maybe I would have looked further into that option. But I do think that, we are so fortunate to have a lot of these options. Now, I don't know,
Yeah.
not so much. We've got a whole bunch of stuff happening in our country that's really scary.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that that wasn't my reality
Yeah. Yeah.
13 years ago.
Yeah.
I think that that's really scary for a lot of young moms, or just any people. Um, But yeah, I definitely went and got all the information and I just made the decision that was right for me. And I think that for anything in our whole parenting journey,
Mhm.
that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
Just get the information and make the choice that's right for you,
Yeah.
whether it's breastfeeding or where you send your kid to school or what activities you're putting them in or what food you're feeding them, right?
Right.
There's so many options, and we're very fortunate to just have these little mini computers at our fingertips. You can just Google all the things,
I know.
but that can like lead to information overload sometimes. But yeah, I think just like gathering all that information and making the decisions that feel most aligned with yourself
Mhm.
and being able to trust yourself to make those right decisions. I do think that, I am, like, really proud of that Abby, that young mom who made that choice for herself that was aligned with me and the right choice for me, even though it went against some of the things that people closest to me were saying,
Mhm.
because I feel like Abby back then did not trust
Yeah.
herself. Where now I'm in, like, such a different space, and I've gone through so much therapy and so much of my own healing journey that I do feel like I trust myself more now. Um, but what a huge thing that Abby did.
Yeah.
I'm proud of her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, what about the decision to, be a therapist? Like, how did
Mhm.
you decide that that's what you wanted to do?
I actually decided that when I was 15 years old. Yeah,
As
and
many
my thing
helpers and
was
healers do, right?
yeah, 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 and my thing that I, like, said at 15 was I just wanna help kids like me.
Mm,
I was living in a home where there was a lot of addiction issues, just a lot of family, not great stuff going on in my family home growing up. And I wanted to help little girls like me. And I do.
mhm,
I work mostly with teenagers in the clinical setting. And then now that I have like incorporated my services over on You the Mother, all my coaching is around mostly like the estrangement piece.
mhm,
And so I feel like now I'm just like kind of progressing as I
mhm,
progress, right?
mhm.
Just like helping
Yeah,
different versions of me,
awesome. Yeah.
and I'm like, once I like heal that version, then I'm like able to help that version. And
Mhm.
then like, kind of the thing goes on and on. And it's just beautiful. I love it. I love what I do. And it's really hard when you have hard family stuff,
Yeah.
And I think it's good to have a helper that gets it. I think like in my own therapy and my own healing, um, I've had two really great therapists and both had similar stuff in their
Mm,
background, who could like not overshare,
yeah,
but could say, "Hey, I see you and I get
yeah,
it." And that just makes all the difference, I think, to be so seen and validated and not just like, tell me more about that. How did that make
yeah.
you feel?
Yes, yes. Yeah,
Like, yeah, that really does suck. I hear
yeah,
you, like you need those kind of people. So
yeah,
definitely shop around if you are looking for therapists. There's a lot of really great ones and there's some ones that just might not be for you, and that's okay.
yeah. I know that
Yeah.
feeling as an adult, just
Yeah.
and so I can only imagine as a teen when
Mhm.
that's everything, being seen, right? I think for all of us at any point in our life, that's what we want, but I think certainly as a teen, maybe in a tough situation at home where, you need that. You need someone
Yeah.
who can get on your
Yeah.
level and just,
Yeah.
like, be in it with
Yeah.
you, you know?
Yeah, I definitely needed it, and I did not get that help when I was a
Yeah.
teenager. I was just the problem at my
Mm.
house, but, like, we're not gonna get you any help for being the problem, we're just gonna tell you about it
Which
repeatedly.
is interesting because you said
Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
like, which is super interesting because you shared how basically you spent most of your life just trying to please everyone and achieve, achieve, achieve.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
you have I think I've heard you have siblings, yes?
Yeah,
Are you
yeah,
where are you in the
yeah.
birth order?
I'm the
Yeah, okay, so
oldest.
your oldest daughter. I
Yeah,
mean, that says a
yeah,
lot right there, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and, you know, you mentioned that you're estranged from your mom. Um,
Mhm.
I know I'm gonna ask this and you're gonna be like, "Well, that's, like, not one thing," but, like, what was what broke the camel's back on that? Because I know that you spent a lot of
Yeah,
years, you know,
yeah,
kinda going back and forth on this
yeah,
relationship, and what made it that you were like, "Okay, now I'm done."
yeah. So I think like most of us that are in this space of estrangement who have gone no contact with a parent, it is not just one thing, right? It is years of a lot of things.
Mhm,
And often, this is the last resort is going no contact. So we've communicated our boundaries. We've said, hey, when you do this to me, this is how it makes me feel. We've tried to have the conversations. We've maybe limited contact to, I'm not going to text you every day. I'm only going to text you a couple times a month, or I'm only going to see you at holidays, or, like
mhm,
whatever that looks like. Um, and so, by time we get to no contact point, it's like I literally cannot go on in this relationship with these behaviors anymore. Like this is impacting me, my mental health. I'm not the partner I want to be. I'm not the parent I want to be.
mhm,
Um, for me, my mom uses the silent treatment as a form of punishment or just like when she doesn't agree with what you're doing. And it can be something big, like choosing to have a baby at 21 years old. Or it could be something small, like, hey, I'm going to go camping with my friends this weekend. And she doesn't think that you should go camping with your friends that weekend.
yeah,
And these are both things that have happened.
oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and like, you just never know, like,
Mm,
what mom you're going to
yeah,
get or whatever. And so once this always has impacted me, and I've always communicated that like, hey, when you do the silent treatment to me, like it just throws me into a
mhm,
tailspin. I think maybe she likes it. Um, but
mm,
but I also didn't trust myself enough to be like, hey, you know that you don't have to be in relationships that treat you this
yeah,
way, right? Even if they're your
yeah,
mother. Um, Until it started affecting my
mm,
children. So when my oldest was 9, it started touching him,
mm,
and he started communicating some of the same feelings that I have been feeling my whole life, and I'm like, "Oh my god, it's not just me, I'm not crazy."
mm,
Like, this whole time, I've been like, "No, it's me, and I'm the problem, and I'm crazy. I'm making things up, I twist it." Like, that was the narrative that was spoken to me my whole
mhm,
life, and I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna do that to my child." And so
yeah.
that kinda gave me the courage to finally stand up and say, "I am strong enough to take this on. I'm not gonna let my children go through relationships that treat them like this." And so I communicated that. It wasn't received well. And so here we are,
Yeah,
just like I think that's the hardest part about boundaries is you can speak your boundary and say, "Hey, I can't show up in a relationship where XYZ is happening. This is now not only impacting myself, but now my children, my family." No. And we can't control how the other person responds.
yeah,
That's the hardest part about a boundary, I think,
yeah,
is that you just, like, want them to be like, "Okay, that sounds great, I will stop doing that." That's not what happened, so we are estranged and no contact for 3.5 years. That's not the story that she tells people, and that's a whole
yeah.
thing that I think a lot of us that are estranged have to deal with. My first therapy session after I went no contact was I sat on my therapist's couch and I said, how do I protect my siblings from
Mm,
this? And I wish I could go back to that version of Abby and be like, "Stop worrying
Yeah.
about everybody else." But there is a ripple effect that happens. There's different versions of the story that will get told. There are lies that will be said about you, and there is a societal and a family system guilt and shame that will happen,
Mhm.
and you have to walk into your healing journey and walk through that fire of healing those parts of yourself and getting to a space of, I'm not
Yeah.
carrying that guilt.
Yeah.
I'm not carrying shame. I know that this was not me. Um, I have text messages and emails to prove it, but you
Mhm.
know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah.
But I think that that's something that a lot of us do. And I struggled with at the beginning of my journey as well, is feeling that guilt and shame of, am I gonna mess up my kids by doing this? Am I crazy? Was it really that bad?
Yeah.
And you go through kind of gaslighting yourself. And finally, I am at a place now in my own journey where I am so sure and I do not feel guilt. I feel
Mhm.
sadness, I feel grief, I feel angry at times. I've moved past a lot of my anger, but that anger can still come up for me. Um, I feel pain, but carrying that guilt is not something I will do anymore
Yeah.
because, I clearly communicated my needs, the things that were happening for my family, and me choosing my peace, my family's peace, them to have a good mom.
Mhm.
I'm not going to feel guilty for that.
Yeah. Do you have you maintained a relationship with your siblings?
Not with my brother. My brother is very mom's side only. We've only had one conversation between the two of us about it, in these 3.5 years. And it was kind of just like putting the fingers in the ears, like, I'm not listening to your side. I'm not listening,
Yeah.
which is
Mhm.
fine, which is fine. That was really hurtful in the beginning, and I held a lot of anger about that. I have more understanding for that now, where I just feel like when you're the person in the family that steps out of the role
Mhm.
that you're supposed to be playing and disrupts the dysfunctional family system, you're gonna be the scapegoat.
Yeah.
You are the crazy one because, like, no, I don't want to do that healing work. It's hard and it's
Mhm.
scary. I don't want to go against my mother.
Mhm.
I totally see all of like these different complex sides to why people can't or won't step out of that. And so now I just have like more compassion for it or more understanding. Um, it sucks, but it is what it is kind of thing.
Mhm.
And then my sister tries to play very uh neutral,
Okay. Okay.
which is complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have a relationship with my sister. Um, I'm sure being in that role, I know is hard for her,
Mhm.
of trying to maintain and just like play Switzerland between these two sides. I think it's very challenging and I recognize that, but it definitely does have a ripple effect and a toll on lots of different members in the family. And I feel for that. I don't know.
But yeah, but whatever.
But
Yeah.
but, I think that, like,
Yeah.
once we kinda get to a space of, I'm no longer gonna abandon myself to keep the peace for everybody else, that's when your whole life
Yeah.
changes,
Okay,
you
and
know?
last, specific question on that, and then I'll move on.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Your dad, you said you have a relationship with your dad.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah.
is he still with your mom?
They're
Okay.
divorced, they're divorced. They
Be
divorced when I was
Okay.
18. I was a senior in high
I was gonna say
school.
because 'cause that's gotta be, like, a
Yeah.
whole other thing if they were still
Yeah.
together and trying to navigate that, oh my god, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that well, first I wanna say, as you were initially, like, going back in the conversation a little bit, sharing, when I asked you about what sort of broke the camel's back and you're sharing all that,
Mhm.
I don't know why, but, like, the image that was coming to my head
Yeah.
was choosing, like, as I'm listening to you talk about how you needed to cut contact with your mom, like, I just imagine,
Yeah.
like, literally, like, flesh ripping. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like
I compare it to, like, cutting off your arm.
yes, like, it's
That's, like, the analogy I use.
yes, and that's, like,
Yeah,
kind of just what I was instinctually visualizing because
yeah.
you speak about it now, like, clearly you've done a lot of work on this and you've talked
Yeah.
about it a lot, so you speak about it with a fluidity and an ease that,
Mhm.
I appreciate because it allows us to be here talking about it, but
Yeah.
holy crap, like, I feel myself, like, getting emotional now just thinking about it, like,
Yeah.
th that ooh, that relationship, like, I feel like
You're biologically hardwired
it's
to want and
yes,
need your mother.
yes,
Yeah.
and I'm
That's the hardest person you'll ever walk away
yeah,
from,
and
ever in
you
your whole
also,
life.
like, you hear more often, right, about, like, having to cut off a spouse or a former
Mhm.
partner or a co-parent or even a
Yeah.
sibling, but
Yeah.
man, that mother relationship
Yeah.
to as the child, right, even as an adult, you're still
Mhm.
her child,
Right.
having to do
Right.
that because that's what's best. I can't even imagine, like, truly the level of pain and discomfort and, um
It's incredibly painful, and I think that the messaging that is around it in our society makes it even more painful.
mm,
So, like, people who are on this journey will hear from their family, from society, "But she's your
yeah,
mother.
yeah,
You should just forgive
right,
her. Was it really that bad?" And just, like, the gaslighting that happens when the things that should be said is, "But she's your child.
right, yeah,
How much did you have to go through before you made that impossible
right,
decision to go no contact?" That is what should be said to people that are in these situations, and it just, like, makes me, like, so ragey and, like,
yeah,
just wanna, like, scream
right, like, who
sometimes
would
when you see
choose that
stuff.
if you didn't have to, right? Like, that's
Because, like, it, definitely is being talked more about on social media, which I'm thankful for. Um, but then you have this generation of, our parents who are also on social media who are kind of speaking back to this
mhm,
of, the entitlement. We've done so much for you. Um, this generation just it's so trendy, and I'm, like, air quoting, it's, like, so trendy to just cut off anybody, and you just, like, wanna scream, like, there's not one person in this walk that wanted to be
right,
here.
right,
We spent years actually trying not to get
yeah,
here, and
decades,
you didn't meet us anywhere
yeah,
to help that situation, you know what I mean?
yeah,
And so it literally is, I think it's like cutting off your arm. It is painful. You have to now learn how to navigate life without your arm that you've had your whole life,
mhm,
and it's always going to hurt. You're going to have a scar now there. People are going to be like, "Oh, what happened to your arm? You used to have one."
yeah,
You're going to deal with the conversations,
yeah,
right? And so it's just like so crazy that it's like that these conversations around, "Oh, it's just, like, glorified to cut off your own mother now." Like, are you kidding
I
me?
know, yeah,
It is the most painful thing I've ever had to walk through. And I've had somebody in one of my groups kinda say that same thing that you were saying about how I can just, like, kinda talk about it with ease now. And she was like, "Are you always so
yeah,
calm about this?" I'm like, "No." Um, but I am further
yeah,
along. Right? And so, like, in the beginning, it looked like depression,
mm,
like, I would be calling my husband home early from work for months,
mm,
like, "I can't be here alone with my kids, I'm not okay. I just need to get in my bed, I can't do my life." And I was really not okay
yeah,
for a good year plus.
yeah,
Um And so now, I just want to be in this space so much for those people that are in that beginning
mm,
space because that beginning is like walking through fire. It is so
yeah,
painful. And, when we talk about like healing journeys on the internet, it's like, it's so beautiful. It's rainbows and butterflies, and you're going to be like this better version of yourself.
yeah,
And that's true.
but
But
it's
the
messy,
path that you have
yeah,
to walk to get there, ugh, I don't wish it on anybody.
yeah, no, it's horrible,
It's
yeah,
horrible. Yeah.
yeah, um And I wanna note that that year plus that you're talking about
Yeah.
also coincided with a pandemic and a newborn.
And a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot.
The and
It was a
having
lot.
3 older kids that were looking for you to
Yeah.
then homeschool and
Yeah.
do all the
Yeah.
things. I mean, that is wild. Like, do you look back at that and just, like, marvel at yourself for, like, how you how you did
I
that?
wish, I guess I don't know how I did it, honestly. Probably Marcus. It was just like holding me my head above water. Um, I wish more people would have known,
Mm,
you know. I don't think that anybody, my family, my friends, anybody like knew how bad it
yeah,
was or what I was going through. And that's
yeah,
hard because, like, everybody was going through the pandemic at the same time, you know what I mean? And, like, so we were all kind of in our own thing. Mine was just, like, so many different things, and it was scary,
yeah.
you know? Like, I'm thankful I'm alive, honestly.
Mm,
Um, and I guess, like, the thing that I would just say to anybody who's in that beginning stage where it just is so heavy and you don't have to have all this other stuff on top of it like I did, it can, like, just be that, and that is heavy enough, is to get help, to get in therapy, to get help because that and Marcos probably saved my
mhm,
life. But yeah, it was a lot being postpartum. We went no contact when I was 14 weeks pregnant. Well, I guess, like, that's kinda, like, when the silent treatment happened, and then I reached out maybe around, like, 20 weeks pregnant, begging her not to miss my last pregnancy and to show up for me and my family, and this was in 2019, so this was pre-pandemic. Um, and then, yeah, it just didn't ever circle back around, and I just think, like, some things were just too much for me, and I can't go back there,
mhm, mhm.
and so, yeah.
Um, I agree with you. I think that, healing journey, a lot of the, you know, therapeutic words,
Yeah,
concepts, ideas are being thrown around a lot on the internet. I think that, like you said, there's this like really awesome aspect of it.
yeah,
And then, there's the downside, which I've talked a lot about on the show, but you know, that journey for you, like therapy, like what did the work look like? What were you actually
yeah,
doing, and let's take away the kind of like facade of healing journey and actually like talk
yeah,
about what it really is and what it was for you at
yeah.
the time, and maybe even now, because I'm sure it's not something that just, there's no end, there's no finish line is what I'm looking for.
No, there definitely is not.
Yeah.
Like, this is gonna be a wound that you carry with you for life. Um, yeah, so I guess, like, in the beginning, I was just doing weekly talk therapy. My therapist is specialized in this particular topic and has that background, in her own life, which I think was really helpful.
Mhm,
Um, and then I think just really leaning into my partner and just being very open about what was happening inside of me.
mhm,
Um, because I was having a lot of scary
mm,
thoughts, just not feeling like I belonged here or, um, you know, if my mom can't love me, how I'm definitely not
oh
lovable or
my
worthy of
gosh,
anybody
yeah.
else's love, and so a lot of work around that was the beginning for me, um, and getting myself, like, out of that depression and unstuck.
Mm,
And then I did EMDR with my
mm,
therapist, which I highly recommend for anybody who has any kind of trauma, really great, therapy practice. So I did EMDR, and then I think once I became more unstuck, I started to redefine who I am.
mm,
And so I started leaning more into different friend groups, I shifted my platform of You the Mother and what I do there and how I help people there. And just everything that I'm doing in my life now is so intentional and so aligned with who I am and what I am about, right? Um, or I try to be at least. I wouldn't say I'm a perfect being ever. Um,
No one expects that of you
but
either.
but you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think that and I think that's kind of what comes with healing is you are, and my husband says this about me, that I'm a lot more choosy about who I spend my time with now.
Mm,
Where it used to just be like, I just want to be with people.
mhm,
Now I'm very intentional on, you know, how is this relationship showing up for me?
mm,
Is this a relationship that drains my energy? Is this a relationship that feels very one-sided? Like I want deep, meaningful relationships in my life where I can share, you can share, and when it's just like this flow of love,
mhm,
and so I have a very different group of people around me now than I used to. Um, the way that I spend my time is very different,
mm,
Previous Abby has grown.
mhm, mhm,
And I love that, right?
mhm,
Um, and yeah, I think, I'm very just more intentional. More of my therapy work now, currently, since I've gone through, some of my grief work, some of the EMDR, healing some of my trauma. Now it's more focused on how I show up with my children.
mhm.
And I think like that's a whole nother thing to a healing journey if you're healing while parenting
Ugh, yeah,
is how easy it is for your parents to come out of your
yeah,
mouth. And you're like, "Why am I just like my
yep,
mother?" You know what I mean? Like, I know how awful this is. I know what it feels
yep,
like, and that it's just, like, so easy or that their children are just these little trigger pushers, and they, like, push all these things of, "See,
yeah,
you are never listened to," and you're like, "Nobody ever listens to
yeah,
me," And so being just very intentional with myself, and that's more of the work that I'm doing in my therapy currently, um, is just being more in tuned with me so that I can show up for them and be a different version and break some of those cycles, is something that I'm very committed to. And having those conversations with your partner, because my partner does not come from a similar background. And so I think that having to teach him some of like these words or some of the
yeah.
things that I'm doing and hold me accountable, we were sitting at the dinner table last night or the night before, and he was like, maybe different words,
Ah,
but
that's
like
awesome.
something that I had
Yeah,
said like came
yeah.
out, and he was like, don't say
Rethink
that.
that.
We don't say those things to our kids. I'm like, "Oh, yeah," but, I
It's
think
good.
that it's okay to show up
Yeah,
messy, it's okay to mess up, because I think that some of those repair pieces are equally as important. My life would be completely different if I had a parent that
mm,
would be accountable for their actions, acknowledge hurt that they do to you,
mhm,
apologize, so there is so much to be taken away in those messy moments too, that repair is really important. I always want parents to remember that because I think that we just are like, we have to show up perfect and do all the things right all the
yeah,
time. Like, no, you don't.
yeah,
You don't. But you do have to be accountable and say sorry when you don't.
yeah. Has
Yeah.
anything has anything come out of your healing journey thus far that has really surprised you, maybe that you wouldn't have expected to get out of this?
Oh gosh. Everything.
Okay,
Everything.
everything, yeah. Well, you don't know till you
What has
know, right?
surprised me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely where I am now. I wish I would have done this 13 years ago,
Mm, well, there's a
you
reason,
know?
right?
Yeah, and there definitely was, I definitely was not in a space to take on all this stuff back then
Yeah,
by myself, literally.
yeah,
I definitely needed the support system that I had now, even though it's kind of small, it's important. Um, I guess the thing that has for me, just how much I do trust myself
mhm,
now, you know? Um, for my community, I'm really thankful that I'm in a space that I talk about this on my platform because I had no idea how many of us there are out
mm,
there. And that has been surprising,
Yeah.
mind-blowing. Um, I'm glad that there is a space where people can land and have that community because I know how incredibly lonely it
Mhm.
is, especially in the beginning. If I would have had
Mhm.
any account that was talking about it 3.5 years ago, I don't know of anybody that was talking about this, or just any place to kind of land. That would have been a total game changer for me. But it's just like, you read the comment sections when I post about it, and it's just heartbreaking and beautiful,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? It's so much both. I just, like, see them all, like, seeing each other and supporting each other and, like, commenting on strangers', comments, and it's so cool, the community that is there, the validation, the empowering, and I just wish none of us were on the journey,
Yeah.
you know?
Being in that space and being that place for people to land, I
Mhm.
imagine that also comes with its challenges.
Yeah.
How do you what are some of them, and how do you protect yourself, or how do you keep yourself grounded through it?
Yeah. Right now, I'm in a space where I just feel very fulfilled by this work.
Mhm.
Um, I made boundaries for myself a long time ago on social media that I don't read all the
Okay.
comments. So I'll only give myself, little windows where I'll read comments. So I think like that's important if you are a content creator in any capacity. Because comment sections can be
Mhm.
draining. Reading other people's trauma can be a lot.
And you're not
Um,
everybody's
even
therapist,
I'm not
Yeah.
everybody's therapist, but I do offer those services for people that do want those services. But I mean, like the group work now that I'm doing, that is like so soul giving for me. Just like watching those transformations happen in those spaces and watching those women show up for each other and learn and, be on that walk and on that journey. It's so cool. Um, but Yeah, right now, I don't think I'm in a space of, like, burnout with it,
Mhm.
which I know can come,
Mhm.
but not yet for in that
Mhm.
space. I have gotten there in therapy at times, and I think that you just have to create better boundaries for yourself, make sure that you're self-caring,
Mhm.
making sure that you're being intentional with you, resting. Um, we just live in such a culture that's like, go, 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 hustle, hustle,
Yeah.
hustle. Rest is weak, rest is lazy,
Yeah.
and it's not. Rest is so productive. So just being more intentional with how you are spending your time.
Do you think that, your experience and your knowledge
Mhm.
as a therapist did that give you a leg up in the healing, or was it a detriment? Like, what impact did that play?
I say this exact thing to my therapist. And like we kind of like, I don't know, have a little powwow about it. I'm like, sometimes I wish that I didn't know as much as I
Can
do.
imagine, like, cause you can see,
You know what
like,
I mean?
every, like, rabbit hole, it feels like, right?
Yeah. Or, like, you're just, like, more self-aware
Mm,
than, like, the average person, I
mhm,
think. Maybe not all therapists, but I feel like my therapist is like, "You're very self-aware." Um, and I feel like I am to maybe a fault sometimes.
mhm,
It's like, you don't have to be, like, deep diving on all of your stuff all the time. But then I don't know, because I feel like now in my healing journey where I was living in so much anger at the beginning, and now I've moved to a space of more acceptance, maybe is the word. I don't know if that's the word. We'll go with that. But I see my mother differently now
mm,
than I did then and when I was living in anger, and I contribute that a lot to maybe my clinical background, where I can see her as a human with her own trauma. I have so much compassion. I could sit here and analyze her away and be like, this is exactly why she is the way she is. This is exactly why she can't apologize or take accountability. Um, and so I do have a lot of compassion for her and for what she's been through, and I can't show up in a relationship with you like that.
okay.
And those two things can be true at the same
Yeah,
time.
that's a very intentional and.
Yep.
That no, there
Right.
was a very specifically chosen and there.
And
Yes, but
I see you, I have compassion for you, and I'm gonna choose me and
yeah,
my mental health, because my children deserve a mom,
yeah,
and they deserve a healthy mom.
yeah. That
Yeah.
and is that's the hard part.
Yeah, it is.
That
It is
little
the hard
word, like,
part.
that is the hard part because you wanna
And
go,
it is, like,
but
applicable
da da
in
da.
so many
What's
spaces,
that? Say it
right?
again.
Yeah. It's like it can be used in so many
Yes.
spaces of our life
Yeah.
too, that, like, there are just these both feelings that show up for us in so many different areas that are both valid, and it's like, how can they both be valid? They're so contradictory.
Yeah.
You're like, because we're just complex humans.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, your online
Yeah.
presence
Yeah.
has evolved. I know
Mhm.
just from following you, and you shared it a little bit here.
Yeah.
Um, what was the choice originally to start it all, to get online
The
and on it
choice.
all?
Yeah, so that was definitely my young motherhood self.
Okay.
I started my motherhood journey, like I said, when I was 20 years old. This was 13 years ago, so there wasn't Instagram parenting gurus, there was no TikTok, there wasn't Facebook mom groups, so I had no place to plug into on the internet. And it was also a time when my peers weren't having children,
Mm,
so my start to motherhood was very lonely, and I always knew that that was going to be some kind of passion of mine to
okay.
create a space for moms to connect. Um, and then during my extended maternity leave with my third child, I was like, now is the time.
Okay.
I have the time and the space to do this. I want to start a podcast.
Mhm.
So I started a podcast and I started the Instagram alongside of it. It was previously Mimosas with Moms, which was an interesting choice because I don't feel like it was ever like brunching with the girlies. Like my content is very like heartfelt and like connecting, and I don't know, the highs and lows of
We're figuring
motherhood.
it out.
Whatever, it seemed catchy, and then I
Was.
wanted to change my name, like, I don't know,
Mhm.
maybe a year in, but I was like, "I have all these followers, I
Mhm.
can't change my name," and I went through that whole thing with myself
Yeah.
for way too long, and I finally was just like, "I don't care, I'm changing my name and being more aligned with myself because that's where Abby is now."
Mhm.
And so I'm now You the Mother, and I have the podcast. My Instagram is where I hang out the most. I'm on TikTok and Facebook, kinda.
Yeah. As we all
And
are, kinda.
yeah, kinda. TikTok scares me. I don't know what it is. I
A
wish I would
lot.
like show up there
Yeah.
more, but just like the audience just doesn't seem as lovey as like my Instagram audience.
Mhm.
Like I just have created such this, like, love bubble in my corner on Instagram, and I just, like, love them.
Stick with it.
I
It's
just wanna hang
working.
out
Yeah,
there.
it's
I just wanna
working.
I'm safe there, they love me, and I love them, and it's just great. But yeah, so then as, like, things evolved to You the Mother, I created, group coaching and individual coaching, so that's been beautiful.
Mhm.
And I started the Estrangement Project with Maggie Nick over at Parenting with Perspectacles, or Maggie with
Mhm.
Perspectacles now. Um, but yeah, we co-founded the Estrangement Project. That's been amazing and wonderful. And we're working on another project that's kind of similar. Stay tuned. And yeah, so I just feel like my work is more aligned with me,
Mhm. Okay.
and it's great.
You, you talk a lot about on your platforms, like, the identity aspect of
Yeah,
motherhood,
yeah, yeah,
and you've actually sort of organically, like, labeled yourself a few times throughout this conversation, like, new
yeah,
mom, single mom, young mom. You
yeah.
know, how do you identify now in motherhood?
Right, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe just mom. Tired
Tired
mom.
mom? Successful
Tired
mom?
mom. Yeah.
Cycle breaking
Maybe
mom?
it's rock maybe it's rocking me, maybe I'm rocking it. Cycle breaker mom, probably. Yeah. Yeah. I know, I think I wear many hats right now because I have a wide spread of ages right now where Oliver is turning 13 this summer. So that's like a whole different
Yeah.
stage of parenting. So I'm like up there with him. And then the three younger ones are 6, 5, and
Oh my
3.
gosh.
Um,
Oh,
so, I've got like back-to-back
girl.
kindergarten
Oh,
years where Beatrice is in kindergarten this year, and then I just signed Josie up for kindergarten next year. I think I've really leaned into though, as I've gone on, and I wish I could go back to young motherhood, Abby, is I've really leaned into that you don't have to have it all figured
Mhm.
out and you can just be a mess and like just own it. Where it used to be like I have to like at least put on like this face of like, I know what I'm
Mhm.
doing and I deserve to be here. I don't know. But now, like, I just went through kindergarten registration last year, and I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing this year
Yeah.
again. I don't know. Like, it's so weird. But I walked into Josie's pre-K this week, and I'm like pulling up the emails as I'm walking in. I'm like, are you supposed to fill this out before I go for the testing? That's like recommendation paperwork. And they're like, no, just email it to me. I'm like, thanks. I just have no idea what I'm
Yeah.
doing. And now I'm just so open about it. I
Yeah.
just don't care. And like, I don't know. Some parents have it all together. I don't.
No, they
I
don't.
have my weekly
No, they
check-in and it
don't.
like keeps me on track, but
Yeah,
like
they're lying.
I still have no
They're
idea.
lying. I don't believe them.
Like I don't know. We just do the best we can and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
say sorry when we drop some
Yeah.
balls.
Yep.
I don't
I
know.
know. I feel you. All right.
Yeah. But definitely more intentional and cycle breaking.
The intentional cycle breaking mom.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, Abby, is there anything that you wish I would have asked you or would have thought to ask you that I didn't, or anything you want to leave people with today?
I don't think so. I just really hope that those who are on these kind of healing journeys are walking through the fires of estrangement. I just really hope that you know how strong and brave you are. It is a hard, hard road, and making that choice was not easy, and it was not you. And you can put down that guilt and shame, and you are so, so strong. And I so see you.
Mm.
So just that for those people. Warm hug. And if you are on that, journey, we're going to Costa Rica
Oh,
in November
nice.
for the Estrangement Project retreat. Um, so come join us in person. I'd
Wow.
love to squeeze some of you guys in person,
Oh
but
my
yeah, we
gosh, that's
just launched
amazing.
that. Yeah, I'm so excited. There's gonna be a waterfall and there's gonna be zip lining and all kinds of cool stuff. And there's gonna be transformative workshops and so much healing and love bubble sessions
Very
and
cool.
just
And
really
this is
excited.
open now for
Now. Yep.
signing up and
Yep.
going
Yep.
in
Yep.
November in
Yep.
Costa
In
Rica.
November. Yeah. It's
Cool.
gonna be so fun. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm excited.
I'll link all the things for that. That sounds amazing.
Thanks,
I'm
Christy.
not like in probably need of that workshop, but I want to go. Yeah. I don't know.
I know, I
I'm
know.
like
Well,
that.
I just got together with some other creators a couple weeks ago, or maybe last week, Valentine's Day, whenever that was. And we were talking about we need like a retreat for just like
Yeah.
moms. Yeah,
Oh,
just a
I
little
mean, I
mom
think we
love
all
bubble.
saw what you're talking
Yeah,
about. All of you
yeah,
girls in
yeah,
your PJs,
yeah.
just like
Yep,
giving
yep,
us all the
yeah.
things to look forward to.
So we're talking about it.
Yeah.
We're talking about it. There's some planning happening. Stay
Okay. All
tuned. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
All right. Because even, you know what? 100% I would go to that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but even the other, like and this, it's totally not appropriate to
yeah,
do that, but I just, I'm that person that like, even if I can't necessarily apply it to my direct life, like I just see so
mhm.
much value in like learning about other
Yeah,
experiences that,
yeah, yeah.
and like I said, it would be totally inappropriate. I'm not even, like, considering it, like, people's lives are not meant to be,
But I
like,
hear
in a
you.
fishbowl
Yeah.
for me to, like, observe. That's not what it's about, but it's even this conversation, like,
Yeah,
I've heard you
yeah,
talk about your story a bunch, but to
yeah,
actually be here face to face with you and, like, hearing it, it just
yeah,
hits so much deeper, and
yeah,
I think that that is something that, we can all we all have something, right? And so
Right.
either in sharing it or hearing it in that person to person, we're virtual right now, but I can only imagine if we were like sitting in a room together, how much even like deeper it would have hit. You know what I'm saying? So I
Right.
think that's
Right.
that's very cool. Do all the retreats. I'll
Yes,
go.
definitely.
Oh my
Definitely.
gosh. All right. Well, thank you so much, Abby. I appreciate you and your time and just thank you. Thank
Uh,
you.
Thanks for creating space for this conversation, Christy. It's important.
Incredible, right? Her strength, her resilience, turning her pain to purpose. It's all so good. Abby, you need to write a book. You need a talk show. I mean, you have the podcast, but we got to get you on TV, girl. You are so inspiring. And I appreciate Abby's willingness to really share the hard stuff. And I'm thinking about when she spoke about the year after she went no contact with her mom, how dark and scary that time was. Thinking back to that, I want to remind everyone that Abby is a trained, licensed, and practicing therapist who struggled to cope and deal with what was happening. And I remind you of that from the point of view that, of course, therapists are human too, but mostly because you need to give yourself a break. Life is hard, hard things happen, and even the trained professionals experience challenges and struggle. It's just a part of life. But what we do learn in therapy is how to cope. Hard things are never going away, but we learn how to cope. And my last reminder here is that learning how to cope and then actually implementing what we've learned takes time. In some cases, lots of time. It doesn't mean you aren't on the path or doing the things that you need to be doing or want to be doing. It just takes time to rewire our brains and change our habits and change our thoughts and adjust. So I encourage all women and moms to check out Abby's platforms, her social media, her podcast. She's a wealth of knowledge, an incredible resource, and a genuine light of a human. Abby, thank you so much for your time and for sharing so much of your story. We need to hear it. And thank you for listening. And I'll catch you next time. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Sass Says is a production of Luann Nigara, Inc. This podcast is meant to be educational and not meant to replace professional therapy or professional medical attention. To learn more about today's show and what's new in my world, head over to sasssays.com. Thanks so much. Talk later.